Hey everybody, let me tell you about Jack London.
Jack London!
Jack London was just a really weird, but really cool guy. Jack London was one of the first writers to become a big-time worldwide celebrity. He was one of the most famous writers of his time, and he was one of the first writers to actually become super rich from his writing. Before this time, a lot of writers just got famous after they died, but he was actually super rich in his lifetime. Jack London was a really outspoken guy, and he used his fame and celebrity to talk up his politics, his socialist politics. And here's a fun fact about Jack London. The communists and the socialists and later the Soviet Union, they just loved Jack London. I read today in the Seattle Times that Lenin, Vladimir Lenin, yes, that Lenin, was reading a Jack London novel on his deathbed. Yeah, Lenin was reading Jack London when he died. When I lived in Armenia as a missionary, Armenia used to be part of the Soviet Union, I met this one guy who just hated young Americans like me who thought that we knew everything. And one day this guy asked me what I wanted to do with my life. I told him that I liked reading and writing. He said, "Oh, so you must know who Jack London is." I didn't. He told me I was an idiot and that I could never be a teacher or a writer if I didn't know who Jack London was. On the one hand, he was right, because Jack London is one hell of a writer. But on the other hand, this story just goes to show just how popular Jack London was in the Soviet Union. They saw him as being the great American writer. Why? Why did the Soviet Union love him so much? Yeah, because Jack London was a socialist. But, hold on, this doesn't mean that Jack London was a fan of Stalin or anything. Jack London died before Stalin took power. In fact, this is just my guess here, I think Jack London would have hated Stalin, because Jack London hated bullies. Okay, let's rewind. Let's talk about Jack London's early life. Jack London was born in 1876 in San Francisco. Back in those days, San Francisco was a pretty gritty place. During the gold rush of 1849, in case you didn't know, that's how the San Francisco 49ers got their name, 1849 gold rush. So after the gold rush of 1849, San Francisco became a pretty chaotic place. All that gold brought in some fancy things, like the cable cars that we know today, but it also brought in things like prostitution and gambling, and just a bunch of lowlifes. And Jack London was from the gritty part of San Francisco. He never knew for sure who his dad was, but his mom, we know, was a spiritualist. This means that she somehow makes her living by conducting seances, that's speaking with dead people, performing astrological readings, and that kind of thing. So as a kid, Jack London largely had to take care of himself. So, job at a factory when he was 14, he made 10 cents an hour in a cannery factory. But when he was 15 years old, a little older, he ventured down to the dangerous but also kind of exciting waterfront where all the sailors would hang out. He used his small, dinky little sailboat named, wait for it, the Razzle Dazzle. Isn't that an awesome name? He used his small sailboat named the Razzle Dazzle to poach oysters, which he'd then sell to local restaurants and bars. According to the Smithsonian Magazine, he could make more money in one night than he could working a full month at the cannery. So here on the kind of seedy waterfront, he fell in with a crowd of hard-drinking sailors. He's 15 years old. We have pictures of him hanging out in a bar, reading books, doing homework when he was like 15. And this life was fine for little Jack for a while, but he wanted to see more of the world, so he joined a seal hunting expedition and voyaged across the Pacific to Japan. When he got back to San Francisco, he took off to ride the rails as a hobo and went all over America on the trains as a hobo. As a result, he even got arrested and served time in jail for illegally riding the trains as a hobo. And all of this was before the guy was 20 years old. So before he was 20, this guy just had a crazy life. So he came back to San Francisco, he finished high school, And then after he finished high school, he went to college for a semester, then dropped out. And then he bolted to the Klondike, which is way up north Canada, to join their gold rush. And here's a quote from Jack London. "It was in the Klondike," London said, "that I found myself. There, nobody talks. Everybody thinks. There, you get your perspective. I got mine." The Klondike and all that time alone changed Jack London. According to the Smithsonian Magazine, he got back to San Francisco, and during that time, he figured out how to write. And then major magazines started printing his stories. Jack London was especially good at making you feel the elements when you're reading his stories. If you want to know what it feels like to freeze to death, you read his short story To Build a Fire. If you want to know what it feels like for a factory worker to devolve into a machine, you read The Apostate. And if you want to know what it feels like to have the raw ecstasy of life surging through your body, you read Call of the Wild. And it was this book, The Call of the Wild, published in 1903, that made him a huge celebrity. Magazines and newspapers loved to publish photographs of him because he was just so freaking handsome. His travels, his politics, his personal life was all so crazy that it made him just a favorite topic of gossip writers. TMZ would have loved him. But he was a firework. His life burned bright and it burned fast, and he died at 40.